Okay, my friends, if your mind is not open, you might as well just click this off right this minute, because you will never, ever, ever be able to comprehend what I'm about to discuss with you. And this is something that's been a mystery, this E-prime enigma layer, how scientists unraveled this deep water secret. Now, I study the Earth. I study all the processes that make the Earth work, and they're going to talk about a thin layer of silica dense material that coats the Earth's core under the oceans, under where all of the moisture is. Now let's talk about it a little deeper. Okay, let me just explain it to you. A few decades ago, they were imaging the deep planet inside, and they identified a thin layer which was a few hundred kilometers thick. That is thin compared to the size of the Earth. The origin of this layer, known as the E-prime layer, has been a mystery until now. They say they've figured it out. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. An international team of researchers, including Arizona State University, all these people, from the School of Earth and Space Exploration, which is both the things I do, both of those, has revealed that water from the Earth's surface can penetrate deep into the planet, altering the composition of the outermost region of the metallic liquid core, which I don't believe is correct at all. And it creates a distinct thin layer of what? Okay, this really turned me on when I saw this. They're showing this layer here and all of these little spritzes coming up, which makes the volcanoes and water interacting down into this thin fluid-filled highway. This is a fluid-filled highway, because now they say water can interact there. They say, oh, we never thought it could possibly be, but interacts with the top. And guess what's in this fluid-filled highway? Dense silica in the bottom of the mantle, right down there, dense silica in this fluid-filled highway. All right, let's talk about this, because I told you, I say that the Earth was a creature. Is it alive or dead? I don't know. Jesus Christ said the same thing. Okay, now this goes back to October 2016, when Yale and all the other top universities in the world, California, Australia, all places. Now, what did they say? They said that there was exceptional preservation of soft-bodied creatures in one single layer worldwide. This one layer worldwide. And they don't know how the fossils preserve so well, and it's controversial. I have explained it, and I explained it to them a couple of years earlier, and then Yale did publish this paper about it. Now they say these exceptionally preserved soft-bodied creatures, and many of these fossils are, whatever that is, anatomistically preserved as casts and molds in sandstone. They're in mud. I call them mud fossils. Now, the preservation was due to rapid precipitation of silica cements. No, they've never seen it before, and it's never happened since. Facilitated by high silica saturation state of the oceans prior to the appearance of prolific silica biomineralizers. What is a biomineralizer? That means that it invaded tissues and turned them into stone. That's what silica does. All right, an early silification model provides a coherent, mechanistic, and empirically supported explanation for the mud fossils, for the widespread preservation of these soft-bodied creatures. Now, the prevalence of early silification confirms that these fossils can provide an accurate window into life, into the seafloor. The whole Earth was a seafloor. It's a worldwide layer. Worldwide layer. This one strata, they call it the terminal Ediacaran strata worldwide. Well, it was actually the Triassic period. And I can prove this too. I have all the things to support what I'm saying. So this is from them. This is Yale. These are all the top people in the world, and they agree now. And they actually did change the name of geology at Yale into planetary sciences or something. Wait a second. And then they show a big picture of a mud fossil. I'm not kidding you. Okay, check this out. I told you they changed the name, and they did. In February 2020, they said they were getting a lot of questions from their people asking about, you know, different things that couldn't be explained with geology. So they renamed Geology and Geophysics Department, and they renamed it to the Department of Earth and Planetary Sciences. And look what they show right here. This is just a big, this is muscle. This is muscle from a mud fossil. And they realize they have to change the way they're thinking. There is no such thing as geology. It's biology turned hard. And I show that quite clearly in this right here. It's just very simple, and it's huge. This right here is interstitium, and this is something I discovered from my mud fossils. And here it is right here. That's interstitium. And all these balls eroded out of it. And that's just skin, and that's an interstitium layer with all those balls, and it's supposed to be able to flex like this and come back to where it is. All the balls have eroded out. Same thing with these Moki marbles, which are all over Utah and Arizona, because that was nothing more than one big slab of skin. And this is what it is, right under the skin. You have all these balls and this strappy, gooey stuff. Then that erodes off and turns into mud, which is the mud right here. And these are the balls. And the balls collect a lot of little sea creature things that live on them, some bacteria, or I don't know what they call it. I think they call these things stromatolites. But what it is they still have biology in them that is food for little sea creatures, and they start growing on there. And anyway, this is biology. And these are, the earth is just slattered with it. I just showed you, I think I showed you the dragons, I showed you all of that stuff. And it's all written about. It's not something that wasn't written about. And it wasn't that long ago. It was supposedly 3,500 years ago, this event happened that Yale talks about, talking 540 million years ago. No, 3,500 years ago is when all my mud fossils happened. I picked them up off the surface of the earth. I didn't have to dig for them. They're just laying everywhere. And everybody I've talked to they can find their own. Virtually everybody's found them. If you find rocks, you just found a mud fossil. A rock with a crust around it, all right? So, like, that's a rock with a crust around it. I know what that is. This is a tendon ball, and that's where the anchor was, right there. All right? Rocks with crusts, like this. Hold on. Now, you see that? That's what you call a crustal rock. Now, I don't know what this was, but I think it was like a fingertip or something. But it was flat like that when it died. Just like that. The way you can tell best is when you lay them and you can't wobble them, they just lay flat like that. That's how it ended up dying. Now, this is that crustal stuff. That is nothing more than grip skin, or in this case, it could be a fingernail. I don't know. I'm really not sure about this. But those would be the vein and the artery, or it's some kind of blood vessels going up in there. But you see how the inside changes? All right? And remember that thing from Yale, how they showed those little spots? All right, and this is another crustal rock here. This was, I don't know what it was, but it was some kind of a body part. I think it was some kind of an organ, to be honest with you, but I don't know. I got to be honest with you, I have no idea. But they all were in the Great Flood, and they're all on the surface of the earth. And Velikovsky, you have to read his works. It was called Worlds in Collision. And we were almost hit by Venus. It combusted our atmosphere, and now this new information tells me that the whole Earth was saturated with silicon, so much denser than I thought before. And that accounts for all this spectacular silicon invasion, which I attributed to the 50 times the skin silicon. But that helped, I'm sure. But now it makes sense. I mean, look, it really all starting to fall into place. But once you see it making sense, you have to say, whoa, let's talk about what we were told our history is. Now we're in a whole new ballgame, my friends, a whole new ballgame. You see, most people miss the first most important statement. This is the earliest fossilized ecosystem of complex macroscopic organisms. It occurred worldwide, and they said, well, maybe it was a failed evolutionary experiment because virtually nothing like that exists anymore. These were giants, these were all kinds of creatures, and I show them, and they weren't soft-bodied completely. They had bones, they had all the same things, but because of nucleophilic substitution, that's how they preserved. It's not controversial. It's nucleophilic substitution, and from a hot, saltwater, silica-rich flood. And I believe now this new statement about the deep water silica density, the Earth would have been wrenched because Venus smashed into our atmosphere and just glanced off of Earth, which actually caused the Earth to literally stand still. It's spinning as it normally does, and it hit that layer, and it's stuck, basically. And this is all written in the ancient texts, all of them, not just the Bible, not just the Quran, not just all these other ones. It's in every ancient text. It talks about this. And at that time, I would imagine maybe these deep water silicates came up. I was taking it, my paper was in 2015. Again, I presented all this to Yale. I just wanted to take hold of it and work with it, and they wouldn't respond to me, so I did it on my own. And here's the paper I published, and I'll explain to you the nuances that are changes to that paper. All right, so this is the paper I wrote about it because nobody would pay any attention, and I said this is all due to fascia, these mud fossils, and that's why they're so perfectly, exceptionally preserved, as Yale says. And this was in 2015. This was a year prior to what Yale did. Now, and again, this is after 5-6 years of studying this, and I studied it very, very deeply, and I came up with the conclusion that the silicates that preserved everything, these invasive silicates, are from your skin. Your skin has 50 times as much silicon as the other tissues. And this hot saltwater flood, this invaded hit from Venus, literally boiled the waters. And it boiled the skin and all of the flesh off, leaving organs. And the bones, but they turned into stone. That's a bone. And all the creatures turned into stone. That's a goose. And that's his feathers. You say, oh, just a rock looks like a goose. No, it isn't. That's his feathers right there. And that's his little beak, bill, whatever they call it. And he died, same thing, flat on this side. They all did. And I put catalase even in here, hydrogen peroxide, and I can still get enzymes coming out from the blood. This was his neck was. All of the bones and so forth that would have been in here have been substituted. It's called nucleophilic substitution, nucleophilic invasion, and it's from watery, transition metal dense silicates. And so anyway, I published all this, and I published all about the fascia facilitated fossilization, because everything that coats you that is membranes is made out of phospholipids. All right. Phospholipids is phosphorus, is phospholipids is fats. It boiled down to aluminum silicates. All right? And aluminum silicates is what feldspar is made of. Literally every igneous rock, and that's most all the rocks there are, they are crustal. They have a crust around them. See this crust? If they have a crust around them, they are going to be feldspar. That's all feldspar too. You see the crust around it? Inside it's all converted into basalts, limestones, whatever. But every crustal igneous rock is feldspar. Feldspar is collagen. Collagen boils down from the phospholipids down to aluminum silicates. That's very well solved, how the aluminum silicates coated and preserved everything, because they are the membrane. That's the membrane. Now, now I'm having to look at the center of the earth as literally a membrane saturated with silicates. Because, well, here's what Jesus Christ had to say. All right, these are supposedly the secret sayings of Jesus Christ written down by his scribe, Doubting Thomas. And these are the secret sayings while he was alive, speaking, and he wrote them down. And Jesus says that whoever understands what these sayings are all about will not experience death. Well, that's a pretty good motivator. So Jesus said, let him who seeks continue seeking until he finds. Don't just look and say, oh, that's good, I'm all good, and go home. When he finds, he will become troubled. Absolutely. When he becomes troubled, he will be astonished. That's absolute. He will rule over the all. Well, I don't know about that, but let me show you number 50 to support my statements. All right, here's number 50. Jesus said, oh, no, oops, I'm sorry. Well, this is important too. It's 56. Here it is down here. But 50 is very important too, because Jesus said, if they say to you, where did you come from? Say to them, we came from the light, from the place where the light comes into being on its own accord and established itself and became manifest through their image. Well, the only place where light comes from its own accord in this area is the sun. So we come from the sun. It says, if they say to you, is it you? Say, we are its children. So we are the children of light, the children of sun. We are the elect. We are the elected molecules from the living Father, which it appears could be the Son. If they ask you, what is the sign of your Father in you? Say to them, it is movement and repose. It's exactly what Tesla said. It's vibration is energy. It's vibration. And either you're vibrating and you have energy, or you're just silent and there is no energy. And there's a whole plethora of spectrum in between that. So it's movement of all types, and just taking it easy, chilling out, repose. But that's number 50, and that also I understand too, because I've seen the light. Now look at 56. Jesus said, whoever has come to understand the world has found only a corpse, and whoever has found a corpse is superior to the world. Well, nobody that I have found. Let's talk about the superior to the world thing, because that's kind of embarrassing when I have to read that. I am certainly not superior to anything, trust me. But I can tell you one thing right now. The world is what everybody has to conform to. The world. What the world tells you to do, you have to do. And the people that run this world, I am superior to, yes. Yeah, that's a fact. I can't help that. That's just the truth. Because I haven't found one that will stand up for truth. They won't look at any of this stuff. And it's a lot of it because they just hate the fact that they were, well, first of all, they're wrong about virtually everything. Because, everything, the expansion of the galaxy and everything, that's about the light. That's why I was so interested in the light thing. Because they say light is pulling away and stretching because everything is expanding because of a big bang from nothing turned into everything, and now everything is exploding away from us. So we have to be the center of the universe. Because if you go that way, they're going away. If you go this way, they're going away. This way, they're going. So, there's a fabric of space, and the whole fabric is. They come up with just the most nonsensical things. Where did the Big Bang start from? From what? There was nothing, then there was everything, and now everything's going away from itself? No. Light is slowing down, coming to us. And I've shown this absolutely without question. There are thousands of fields and particles and dust and all kinds of things, and they call it the quantum foam, and everything that comes through it is getting slowed down as it comes, and by the time it gets to the end of its slowness, they call it the cosmic microwave background. It's just particles floating around in there. They are in repose. So they start with movement and they end up in repose. That's the cosmic microwave background. You see, this is all about fascia, and their conclusion at the end of going through a lot of things about what to eat and different vitamins and so forth, they say they recommend living silica collagen booster, which I'm sure they sell, but it combines two types of organic silicon. This is in your fascia. This is what gives you the flexibility to move. They also have living silica hydrolyzed collagen peptides. That's the collagen in these fabric fluid-filled membranes, and the peptides are just amino acids. And living silica collagen again, and they have the capsules, but this is what they sell. But that's, I don't care if they sell it or not. If it's true, it's true. And inside of your membranes, there is 50 times as much silica, basically. The fascia is where I was talking about in my paper here, where I had 50 times the skin, basically. Which now the skin can be considered just another piece of fascia, because it is. Even the feathers of Augustus here, his feathers are nothing more than fascia. They coat and they protect, and they're made out of collagens and phospholipids. And all membranes are made out of basically the same thing. When they heat it up and boil down, they turn into aluminum silicates, which is feldspar. And again, you can't find a rock that isn't covered with aluminum silicate. If it's a rock with a crust on it, it's aluminum silicates, which is fascia. It's the coating. Skin, feathers, whatever. By the way, this was in 2015, after studying this for 5 years or so. This was my conclusion, that fascia is made of collagens and keragens, which is true, creating a fiber and elastins in a sheet that wraps everything in your body individually, everything individually. That's bones and skin and organs, and even blood cells themselves have a membrane around them, even blood cells. And it all comes together as one giant system. The interstitium is one giant system. Everything has a membrane, but then there are membranes that, like on blood cells, they just float around through your body. But the whole wrapping, all of this sheets that wrap all the organs in your body, like this. Hold on. You see, that's a DNA-tested, CAT-scanned human lung. All right, and that's what that fascia is right there. And this is dense because it's on a lung. If it was on a bone like this, it's very, very thin. There's different types of fascia, different types of coatings. All right, on the lung, it's very dense and thick. But these are all flat because they were in the flood. This one here is a lung. Hold on, let me back this out a little bit. Is on a lung that has, the fascia has eroded. See how thick that fascia is? This is like the plastic wrap. There's almost nothing there, but it is enough to be a membrane that surrounds it. This does not have to stretch and move and get gooey and everything. It's a bone. This has to do this all day long. It's like a big rubber bag. And there's that little flap that holds the lung in, and here's the tab at the top that holds it at the top. And that's how the lungs float around in your body, and they can't go too far. And they all have that flap, all the lungs. They all have that flap. All right. So, and again, DNA tested, CAT scan. I thought the silicon in the skin was the reason there was so much silicon in the in the waters at this particular time of the mud fossils. That's what my conclusion was. Because there would be a lot of extra silicon, but I didn't know about this deep layer of silicon. And if the whole Earth got wrenched like that, everything is going to be mixed. I would say a lot of that fluids from the deep area came up and mixed, and it was extremely silicon. I didn't realize how much silicon there was. Because as I go back through it, like even this, when you talk about silicon dioxide, SiO2, quartz, you see that's a heart. You say, oh no, that can't be a heart. Yes, it is. It's a heart. They call this a water opal. That's the aorta, And this is actually the ventricle wall right here. It runs in between it. There's a taste of blood left in here, the red blood. And the rest is all washed out into complete silicate. If you look at the Mitchell Hedges skull, it completely converted into silicates, except where the nerve fibers were. I'm going to show you that because that's fascinating. I study that sucker, and there's no question what it is, as you will see. But that's a heart, and I had another heart here that I cut in half, and there's the stuff that's inside the heart. It's not just there for nothing. It's there because that's what the fabric of the heart is like. Hold on one second. All right, you remember I showed you my opal heart. Well, it's water opal. But here it is right here. There's the aorta right up in here, and here's this really red bloody stuff. There's a swatch of that coats around here. And then you get into the tendinous material, this stuff here. And that right there is the wall of... I'll show you another shot. Hold on. All right, you see this? This is what the plumbing looks like. You got these big jobbers up here, and then there's a line that runs right down here, and that's this line right here. It separates the chambers. And this was a heart. And I cut one in half to show you what's inside. And here's what's inside of a real heart, and there it is right there. This is the same thing. This was another heart. And I just cut it, and you can see the different colors, the heartstrings, and then the floppy stuff in there. I don't know what you'd call it, but it's the same situation, and they turn into crystal like this. You call it whatever you want, but it's SiO2 quartz crystal, silicon dioxide, and that's silicon attached with the oxygens, dioxide, is what filled in all of these holes. And I have to admit, I was always a little skeptical how even 50 times more in the skin and the membranes and everything could still create so much silicon, because I mean it's just everywhere. It filled in every hole basically. I show you a lung. I got a lung here somewhere. Anyway, you fill in everywhere. Let me show you the Crystal Hedges skull. Okay, here's the lung I was talking about, how they fill in all the cavities. Where there was a cavity, the crystallization happened, and crystals grow in these cavities. They will call them veins, quartz veins, and so forth. Well, that's a lung. And again, that has one of those tabs too. You can't really see it easily, but it's there. They all have a little tab at the end, and that's how they're held in. I don't know what kind of creature this is from, but and also this is a tendon. This is tendon. You see that? You can see right through it. So this is how these things were substituted. And in some places, something like ate everything out, and the silicon just took over. Now, there are going to be lines, and you can see right there, that's a division between where it glued. And this is literally, there's a gluey substance that glues tendons in. I'm serious. And that's it right there. You see right through that, except for that red spot. And that red spot right there, I put in a microscope. I have a couple of videos back. I did this, and I actually put hydrogen peroxide in there, and I got a catalase reaction, which means there's enzymes still in there from blood. Blood is catalase. Well, blood contains catalase. And catalase is an enzyme that dissolves extra oxygens. Hydrogen peroxide has one extra oxygen. It's H2O2 instead of H2O. So what the catalase in your body does is it gets rid of that reactive oxygen by turning it into water. And that's what happens. It just bubbles up, and that's releasing the extra oxygen. So I showed this very clearly, and I showed I had a lot of things bubbling up the mud fossils. So that's tendon. This is, I believe, muscle. And this has a tiniest little bit of taste of red left in it. And I believe, it's kind of hard to see, but I believe this is muscle. And it wrapped around a bone or something like that. This is clearly tendon, from a very large creature. And this is where it glued in. And that glue is really, really something. All right, so anyway, this is Mitchell Hedges' skull. Let's take a real close look at this. And this is going to take a few minutes to do, because if you don't look at every little detail, then it just looks too bizarre to be real. Let's look at how exactly, I'm going to tell you exactly how this thing died, how the body was laid down, and how all of these little features indicate proof of life. All right, first thing I wanted to look at is the jawbone, because it does come off of this skull. The jawbone comes right off. You see that little hole right there? You see it? That's on the side of the jaw. Now, the rest is pretty obvious. It's the jawbone, but it does come off on the Mitchell Hedges skull. Now, let's go take a look at what the jawbone looks there. All right, now I'm not saying this is identical to a human skull, but boy, I'll tell you, it's pretty close. And I believe that's that little spot that I showed you a minute ago in the modern jawbone. And I'm going to show you this compared to another one in a second. But these are the details we're going to be looking at. This cavity back here and what's going on with this right here. And you know, why I am going to tell you exactly how this thing died. And it died like this, on its face. It died just like that. All right. And it was into the mud, probably about up to here. And I know that because the lip preserved, which it would in the mud. And it would turn into silica like everything else. But everything else was completely exposed, and all of the flesh left. No flesh left the lip. So that's why I know he was on his face. And also I know because of the shift of the brain had shifted down this way. Now let's look at this compared to a brain scan. All right, remember I told you about every single fiber in your body, literally every single fiber is separated from every other fiber by fascia. Now, there's different grades of fascia. This is the nervous system in a person's brain, all right? You see these different colors and these different arrays of fibers. What they do is they do different things, you know, vision and hearing and motor, this and that, and all kinds of things. Now, that's why if you don't have the correct coating, which is the correct wrapping, which is the correct fascia, the correct membrane, and in good tact and doing its exact job perfectly, you're going to get short circuits, and then you're going to do that, and who knows what's going to happen. This is all fascia, and every bit of that is controlled by enzymes and literally by bacteria. If you don't have the bacteria to create the correct chemistry, which is the enzyme, you're not going to get the end result. So you're going to have some kind of a problem, possibly. But anyway, that's just an offshoot of this other research. But this is what your brain consists of inside your brain, all of the little working stuff. And then it goes down through the spinal cord, or it goes down through your body into all of the other regions, and they are controlled in a lot of cases by this central processor. I don't know, just think of it that way. Now, so don't forget, I said he was on his face, I think I did, like this, and his brain has shifted down. You see this one's in the way in the back here? It's all bubbled up in the back, just like normal. But if he died like this, eventually it would have settled forward. And he did, he died on his lip. And it settled forward. But here's all, you see this? That's this. Nobody carved that. That's inside. Nobody did that. Nobody would even know how to do that. Who the hell would know how to do that thousands of years ago? All right, and everything else here is exactly identical to all of the fibers that are in here. And they run in a tangled web throughout your entire skull. And that controls everything in your body. And the reason this is all pushed back, his nose and all that, was he died laying flat in the flood like that. And it's easy to tell how they died, in what position they were in, because there'll normally be a flat side, and that's his flat side. So anyway, that is, hold on one second, that I guess is it for the crystal skull. I think you can understand what I'm showing here. And I forgot to show you the opal heart, I think. Don't forget, this is what a real heart looks like in its entirety. All right, and then inside of it, this is what it looks like. So here's what we show here. That's it here. And that is inside. Basically, it's this stuff right here. All right, it's basically right here. And this one is complete and has the tubing at the top and a bunch of the red gooey stuff over here and a big tubing, and it has that ventricle wall running down here, right here. And it's completely converted into silicon. So there was so much silicon. Now I understand, with this dense layer of silicon and a disruption of the whole Earth tumbling like that, would account for exactly what happened. And again, opal is nothing but silicon too. Basically all silicon. The silicates attached to transition metals, which transition metals are the things that are in your blood. All right, this is a heart. And all of these are transition metals, and they will invade certain types of tissues and take them over and lock in with them, and then they become stable. But this is hydrated silicates, and the colors are transition metals. And so this died in an area where it would have been attacked and turned just like this, except there was so much blood that the blood took over the transition and changed it into opal. All right, this is where you're going to get with the places that have extreme amounts of blood, and it puddled, like where that heart was, must have been where there was just virtually a puddle of blood, and it transitioned with these colored molecules that are transition metals. And those are the things that carry things around in your body. And that's why they have all those different colors, because they have these different oxygenation states and affinities to bond with different types of other particles, and they could drop them off and pick things up. They're always circulating through your body. Your blood consists of virtually all of these particles here, in certain quantities. And iron, obviously, is the big one. And that carries your oxygen around and carbon dioxide and all that stuff. Now, so these are the transition metals, and that's why these opals, and there is certain areas, I believe this is a Yoa opal, and there's a Yoa region in Australia, which is virtually, Australia is like one big gigantic scab. I mean, that thing is just nothing but blood, and that's where they have the best opals. So that's what happened. A puddle of blood was there, and then the organic stuff tried to stabilize, and the only thing it could find to stabilize with certain exact types of transition metals, and this might be copper or vanadium, I don't know what. And then all of the rest of the blood puddled down here, because that would have been the downside. And all of the pieces of little bits of blood that have metals. This is metals. You're absolutely saturated with metals. And at the top, which would have been up this way, all you have is the plasma. But in between, everybody is looking for a partner to become stable with. And there were certain affinities, certain molecules want to attach with other molecules. They have what they call propensity to attach to them. They really want to go for that particular molecule. That's why you see the whole thing here, all of that particular type of chemistry, because every bit of your chemistry is different. When you look at your heart, it looks like one big brown blob. No, look close. That's totally different than this stuff. Totally different than this stuff. Totally different from this stuff. Totally different from the insides, which are, they don't want to do a whole lot of gushy interaction. They're just tubes. And muscles are this. Your heart is made of a big band of muscle that goes into like a figure-8 loop, and it just turns this way and that way, and it pumps in, out, that type of thing. Yeah, it's very interesting to study this stuff. But again, my heart's the same thing as this right here. And that's the same as that right there. And that's a little bit, just a taste of blood left. The red is very, very invasive because it goes to every single cell. And of course the black is the vein blood, and that comes back. This was from I don't know what that is, some kind of pacemaker or something. All right, let's get back to this paper, because there's some things that stunned me. I had forgotten all about it. Because this goes back like 8 years ago, and probably 10 years ago I did the research, and I just made a paper on it so that I wouldn't forget it, and I did forget it. But anyway, this is what I had determined, that fascia, at this point nobody was looking into fascia. Nobody cared about it at all. They thought it was just fuzz and it had no big meaning. And so I said all fascia is made of collagens, keragens, creative fibers, elastins, sheets, wraps, everything. I've gone over this before. 20 types is like 28 types of collagens, some keragens. They protect acids, caustic, salts, and so forth. So all of your membranes are very specific. Even the ones in your brain, those are very specific little membranes. So you can lose one of those membranes that wraps your vision fibers, because they're going to be different. So there's going to be some difference to every bit of your chemistry. It's because it's different. It does different jobs, and some have salts, some have acids, some have all kinds of different things. But anyway, they're all different types of materials. Basically, think of it that way. But they're still all fascia. Different types of material coatings, like you might have silk, and then you might have cotton, and then you might have wool, and it's basically, think of it that way. So they're all, the one thing about them is that they have infused with silicon. That was my takeaway back in 2015. And I said, tissues in your body are varied and many. Just like I said, there's all kinds of different tissues, types. And some vascular tubing is completely impenetrable, and connective tissues are highly mineralized. A lot of minerals, and there's a lot of 50 times silicon as other tissue in the skin. And that's what I thought accounted for all this extra silicon, but now I'm of a different opinion. Anyway, silicon carbide is the fossil version of skin. It has a 9 on the hardness scale, which means hard and grippy. That's your grip skin. It's tough as hell. Mudfossils contain all body parts, and each is the product of fascia-facilitated fossilization. That's what I was going to call this. I changed it to mudfossils, just to forget the FFF. Fascia is part of the connective tissue. It's a part of the connective tissue, holds you all together. It invests itself in bundles. Now listen to this. I forgot all about this. It invests itself in bundles at certain places in the body. I call them spur locks now. Like the fascia it's locked in here. It's locked in here. It's actually, I have this little lung here. You see this lung? That's what they look like right there, that little flap. That's the lock that locks in body parts, and that's where the fascia flows through there. It's going to be called the spur lock. Here's one right here. You see that? That's the flap right there. And right at the very end, there's 2 little tips and holes that go to the next, wherever this muscle locked into. This is a piece of muscle. And it locked into something. And right at the very tip, if I showed you in the microscope, you can see the 2 little tips on the end where the fluid-filled highway continued on to the next one. But these lock the body parts in so they don't go floating around in your body, and your muscles stay attached to where they're supposed to be. So anyway, I'm looking into this fascia. And listen to this. The fascia is part of the connective tissue, invests itself in bundles at certain places. So it's the anchor. Think of this. This and that's all starting to make sense now. Because it's your anchor. It's the anchors, all of the whole thing that comes down from there. Guess what? The investment sites where they lock together correspond to ancient acupuncture points very closely. There's putting needles in those things to stimulate them. Those are your anchors. And then I say it is now suspected that fascia connective tissue may be fiber optic. Well, that was my suspicion. But anyway, it goes on and on. I don't go too far with this. I just made it very simple. And that's the end of it right there. Well, some of these don't work anymore. I think this doesn't work anymore. But it's all about the fascia. And nobody was looking into this. Like I said, it appears fascia may be much more than fuzz, which is what the doctors refer to it now. They think it's just nothing. By the time they see it in the autopsies, it was flat as a pancake. That's why they actually called it a newfound organ. In 2018, this fluid-filled highway has been called a newfound organ. And don't forget, my paper was here in 2015. I was on this stuff much earlier than the rest of them. Thank you. But I had to find out what is this stuff is in my mud fossils, and nobody knew it. Even the top anatomists in the world said, no, it's just a flat, thick layer of, it's a mat. You're just looking at rocks. I said, no, there's something here. These are creatures' bodies, and there is that layer in there, and it's there. I can see it in my mud fossils, no question it's there. And so anyway, it turned out to go my way at the end. Okay, my friends, this gets very, very, very deep, and it goes back to the first texts that were ever written by the Greeks about Gaia being the earth as an actual creature. The earth herself was Gaia. So the earth is literally a creature. Let's start with that. The gods killed all the giants. All right, the giants were the earth's children. That was her children. And the gods killed them. The other giants, Zeus was one of the gods that smote and destroyed with thunderbolts all of them. Hercules shot with arrows as they were dying. So when these gods had overcome the giants, Earth was enraged. Earth was just pissed off. Earth still more enraged. Earth herself had intercourse with Tartarus and brought forth Typhon in Cilicia. Now, who was Typhon? I'm going to show you who he was in a minute, because he's still here on Earth. He was a hybrid between man and beast. The only thing he had of a man was his thighs. Listen to this. In size and strength, he surpassed all the offspring of Earth. He was the biggest thing there was. As far as the thighs, just the thighs of his legs, just his thighs, he was of human shape, and he was of such prodigious bulk, he out-topped all the mountains. He was taller than any mountain. His head often brushed the stars, and when I show you how big he is, you might agree with that. Then it says, one of his hands reached out to the west, the other to the east, and from them projected 100 dragons' heads. That sounds pretty crazy. However, it talks about Zeus cutting him off with his thunderbolts. Now, from the thighs downward, he had large, huge coils of vipers, which when drawn out reached to his very head and emitted a loud hissing. So they came all the way around, huge. His body was all winged, and unkempt hair streamed on the wind from his head and cheeks, and fire flashed from his eyes. Remember that, fire from his eyes. Such and so great was Typhon when hurling kindled rocks, he hurled gigantic boulders of red-hot rocks. he made for the very heavens to kill. He wanted to kill the gods because his mother, Gaia, birthed him to take vengeance on the gods. So he went right up to after the heavens to kill the gods. And he went up with hissing and shouts, spouting a great jet of fire from his mouth. When the gods saw him rushing at heaven, they made for Egypt in flight. Being pursued, they changed their forms into those of animals. All right? And Zeus pelted Typhon at a distance and killed him and all this stuff. And then it gets very convoluted after that. I'm not sure I go with everything, but up to here, I can tell you, they say they changed their forms into animals. Well, Typhon got a fish, so that's an animal. Let's take a look. All right, this always confused me. Remember I showed you before, 56 says, whoever has come to understand the world has found only a corpse. All right, and whoever has found a corpse is superior to the world. Well, 80 talks about a body. So this one says whoever has come to understand the world has found only a corpse. And I agree. I'm afraid that the world has not made it. And it appears to me, now knowing that this layer exists inside there, that that is the layer of a membrane that is the earth. Now, number 80 talks about a body. You see this? Jesus said, he who has recognized the world has found the body. So if you recognize the world, you have found the body. I'm not sure what that means. But he who has found the body is superior to the world. Now, is he talking about the body of Typhon? Or is the body just, I'm not sure what he means by that. Has found the body of the world, the body of a creature. Well, I can tell you, well, I have found the body of Typhon, and you'll see him right now. Okay, you remember what it said in Apollodorus about him being just absolutely stunningly large and having a red flared eye and spitting fire from his mouth and having, all unkempt, fluffy stuff on the wind and being killed by Zeus. He cut his throat with his great and mighty sword, which is his thunderbolts. Now, this here is Typhon. I'm going to show you on Google Earth. I have it highlighted so you can easily see the outline because people have a hard time seeing it, but this shows you. And I'll show you up against another picture of the same, and you'll understand it. Now, what is this stuff here? All this whole stuff is the runoff of the fluids of his decaying body. And then it basically caved in, and the throat is quite visible here. We're going to be able to see the throat, and they call it, I believe they call it the Drac River or whatever, and it runs down here, the Drac Valley, and I'll show it to you. I believe that's what they call it. I can't remember. It's been a while. This is the dragon scales that line his throat. Right? And all the rest is that winged, unkempt stuff. Now, this is going to be a fluty looking stuff that runs down the side of his body, all fuzzy looking. And it runs the whole length. And that is the same thing you see on the parades in China of the dragons that they show there. They have like a real fuzzy looking thing, and they have a big flared looking face and so forth. And that's this. Now, what does he look like next to an unoutlined one? Here it is right here. There's his red eye. All right. There's his red flared eye. Here's this flashy looking stuff. Remember I talked about that runs all the way down the side of his body, all the way down, all the way down, all the way down. And then this is where his throat got cut, right here, and bled out into the desert. His throat was gashed right there. But that stuff continues to go down his throat. Now, this is where he spit all the fiery stuff out at the fish, which we'll see in a minute. This is all his unkempt, flary, hairy, fuzzy, whatever you want to call it, stuff that they talked about. He had unkempt look to him. And this is all the stuff here. Now, this is the dragon scales that coat his throat. And again, this is that valley that runs all the way down because it's his throat. All the way down, and then it was cut right here. So let's take a look at Google Earth, and then we'll see exactly what it boils down to. But this is how they had him portrayed in the ancient pictures that they found of Typhon being killed by Zeus with his thunderbolts. Now, what do they show? They show the viper coils that they talked about, and they can wrap right around way up to here. And now, he was also supposed to have 100 dragons' heads or something like that on these coils, whatever. But Zeus did, they say, cut his head, all those dragon things off, and then slew him with his great and mighty sword. Now, they're showing a regular person's head. It's not. It's a dragon's head. So, and then they're showing wings. He could have had wings. I have no doubt. Well, I have no way to say one way or the other. I didn't see him specifically, but he does have feathers at the end of his tail. So that could be. But he's not. He doesn't have a human head. So did they know what Typhon really looked like? Why wouldn't they portray him with a dragon's head, which I just showed you? I don't think they even knew what he looked like when they made these. But this in the early Greek times. All right, because here's what he looks like. That's his head, and I'll show you very carefully what he looks like. And they show him as having a human head. And that's just not right. So let's go and look to see what he does look like. Okay, stick with me, mes amis. Here we go. This is North Africa, Mediterranean Sea, Spain, Straits of Gibraltar. This right here, this whole region right there. From here is his head, runs all the way back to the end of his tail, which is here. All the entire North Africa is where Typhon is. These are his thighs of a human. This is where I showed you before his head. Remember his head? And his red flared eye coming back here. And his throat running all the way down here. Let's zoom in on his throat. All right, these are his throat. Now, that's not just normal little rivulets. This is his throat. It runs all the way down, all the way down. Look at this. All right, look at it closely. That is not your average way things work. That is the inside of his throat. Now, all the way down it runs. See it? Running all the way down, all the way down, all the way down. Now, this is the scales that coat the underside of his throat. All this stuff down here, this is just runoff. This is just fluids. All right, because they're running off of his dead, decaying, bloated body after he died, and that's what happens to bodies. They have what they call an effluent runs out. Now, remember I talked about that fluty looking stuff that runs all the way, all the way, all the way, and runs all the way down. Now, his throat was cut right here. That's a cut on his throat. And out coming, it's black now. It was bright green not long ago. So something's going on there. But all this is red and black blood, which is the vein and artery blood running off of his body. Now, here's the scales. Now, here's what I want you to pay attention to. Let's look at those scales very closely. Let's get about from here and we'll look. You see how there's a little... Well, what is that? What's going on with this? Why is there a little spot in between each little clump like that? All right, and you can see these are dragon scales. They're not... That's not your average hills and valleys. All right, and they are coating his entire throat, so it's not just an accident. Now, why do you have these little breaks here, and a break here, and a break here, and a break here, and a break? The reason is he's got to twist his neck. These are like little hinges. It's still very well protected, but you have to have some flexibility in there, or you're done. And those are the flexible spots. And now they just happen to be where things run off out of here. Now, and they go all the way down. They're just, it doesn't stop there. And again, this is his throat. The throat has the same looking, crazy looking stuff to it too. See, look at that. That's the inside of his throat. And these are the dragon scales that were underneath his throat right there. That's it. Now, again, this is just his head. And down to where his throat was cut. Now, all the way down, look at this. These are his thighs. Remember it said the thighs of a human. Well, they do appear to me look like muscle tissue. And human muscle, well, any kind of muscle tissue, probably about the same. But I see that as quite likely this is muscle tissue. All right, but it's some kind of I'm going to go with thighs. And there's two of them, one here and one here. His thighs were of a human. And all this is unkempt stuff, and it runs all the way down, all the way down. And here's where his pooper is. He's got the same, he poops, he's got an avian structure, which is a cloaca. Now, I can show you that. I probably should. This is still his tail, and it still has that same splitty articulation in between each one of these scales. And this is on his tail, and it's running out here because must be like a little puddlish area where stuff runs out as it collects in that area, the blood and so forth. Now, remember we talked about feathers before? If you follow this all the way out, this is his flared tail. All right? This green stuff out here, and I believe it's feathers. Look like feathers to me. There's something going on here. I'm not exactly sure what, but I think it is feathers. You see them? I'm going to go with feathers. Because they all have like flared tails. You see this? I'm pretty sure this is a feathery look to it. But I'm almost certain. It comes out and it just continues as all this stuff plays in and is part of the tail. So that dragon covers the top of North Africa from here to here. Now, remember it said that he had these huge coils. They run all the way down. They're supposed to come all the way back up around to his head. Well, what is this stuff here made out of? That, I'm going to tell you right now, is virtually the same as like ostrich skin. You see this? Like leather. It's like a leather, which would be on his scorpion, on his coils. Now, it takes a while for this to sink in, but you can see, if you were to show this picture to a guy that did tanning of hides, he would see this and say, well, yeah, that's leather. It's going to take a while for it to sink in. Let me turn this light off. Sometimes you get a better shot of it. But you see out here? That's leather. All right, and these are from his coils, his viper coils. If you showed that to somebody that did leather and they know what leather looks like when you put it under a microscope, and I've checked leather, and I have the leather jacket. I looked at that. I looked at my belt. I looked at a whole bunch of stuff. This is leather. All right, and this is what his scorpion, big arms were looking like, and they swing right around, just like it says. They swing right around up in here. And the other one ran off of here over the top of the fish that he was trying to kill. If you remember the text that said they ran and tried to get to Egypt to hide away from this guy who wanted to kill him, whose head could touch the stars. And literally, that's not wrong. This is 1,100 miles long. If he was standing up even half of that, 600 miles, that's way above the space station. All right, now, this is where he spit down all this noxious, nasty fire, basically fire, onto this fish. And it hit his fin right here. That's his big fin. Let's get the overall picture. Here's the fish. All right, take a minute to look at this. I don't want to rush you. All right, see, look at what you see. This is the fleshy part of the fish. Here, up to here, back to here. The tail goes way out here, swings around up here, and the fleshy part comes back to here. This, I don't know what it is. I believe this is his actual eye. Now, these are scales. You see? So he's going this direction. This is his tail. And some of the dragon's scale stuff has come over the top. This is his viper coil stuff too. This is the same stuff. All right, this is not just some kind of ripples in the sand. All right, so he tried to grab him, it looks like to me, to kill the fish. And he got a hold of him a little bit. And again, this is a fish's tail. See, it comes all the way up here. And this is just like the normal looking fish's tail. And it comes up here. And this is where they have that back fin comes way up. You see it? What kind of fish it is, I don't know. But this right here is where this toxic stuff he spit out invaded the vital flesh. Remember I talked about his real vital flesh comes up to here and back down. Well, this right here has been invaded by this toxin that Typhon was spitting down. And here's what the toxin looks like. It comes right out of his beards. You remember his throat? Here's his head. All right, here's the beards. They have two beards right here. And so does the Quetzalcoatl. They all seem to have beards. And this is what the beards look like. This one is sending out some juice. You see what it's spitting out of here? That's coming out of this beard. All right, that's coming out of that beard. And it's mixing up with something else that comes out of his nose. All right, this comes way back. If you follow this back up, that's coming right out of his nose. You see this? And something else is going on here, like he's blowing smoke out of his nose or something. But this comes out of his nose, and when it meets up with the other stuff down here, it's a disaster. You see it coming down? The two of them mix together, and from there it's flame and destruction. And this is just nothing but disaster from that point on. You see that stuff? It doesn't get any more noxious than that. And this is the attack on the fish. Look at this. I mean, you got to look at this stuff kind of carefully. You can't just glaze it over. You know, think about the chemistry going on here. It's just stunning. So now, it continues on until it hits the fish's fin. And right here, the fish's fin is being invaded. Now, I did see some of it ran off this way here, out into this area. We'll talk about that later, probably a different video, because that gets kind of very interesting. But it did hit his fin, and it ate right into his vital flesh. Now, look at how this yellow stuff is coming down here. You see it invading, 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 and here invading, invading. Well, this again has been invaded. All right, so this was his vital flesh. All right, it invaded into here, and it ate off all the surface of the skin and the scales or whatever, and you're down into the blood vessels. You see that? If you know anybody who's a doctor or a nurse or anybody that has any knowledge whatsoever of what the vascular system, an anatomist, biologist, doesn't matter. This is veins. I mean arteries. The red is artery. All right, it brings down the red blood. All right, and this is red blood coming down here. These are blood vessels, and they come off of the main arteries to bring the blood down to the vesicles, where they get right down to the very end and suck all the juice out of them, and then they dump into the through the capillaries into the veins and the lymphatic system to it gets sucked back up through these networks of black stuff back up into your heart to send through your organs and through your lungs and everything to get recharged. It just fixes it back up again. But you see in the middle here, these are things actually growing here. Red blood makes things grow. In the middle of the desert, right here, only in the spots where you have the red blood. See red blood coming down? It doesn't grow where you don't have the red blood. Red blood makes everything grow. All right, so this is, it's the vascular system. You see that? Just take a second to look at that. Think about what you're looking at. What is this black thing going on? What's that all about? Why are these little tiny little bitty things coming out? Those are actually your capillaries. There's where the last pinch is before it gets into this system to be sucked back up, to be cleaned back up, because it's all used up by that point. And they're all over the place. You see all these little black spots? That's what brings it back. And all the red spots are what brings it in. And this is just like flaying the thing, taking off the skin, grinding it right down to where we can see everything. And then over here, we can actually see these invasive chemicals. You see them? Over here, I can see some really green spots. You see, this is the green spot where it's coming down. That's all that nasty stuff invading. Right here is a serious invasion. Serious. And what is happening is this fluid here is coming up to try to eat up the toxins. This is called lymphatic fluid. You see it coming up here? And then it comes all the way over here, and then it comes down to here. You see it? Don't forget, here's where the attack is coming in. Here's the fluid that's trying to counter-attack. And it's bringing all that nasty stuff over to this lymph node right here. And bringing all that nasty stuff in to be cleaned up. Now there's filters in here, and then inside there's all kinds of bacteria. Here's the filters when they first come in. You see, it first comes in, and then there's this filtration system that keeps the big stuff out and only lets the decomposed stuff come in. All right? This is overwhelmed, this lymph node, and that's why it's all black and bubbled up. It's dead. It's dying. And this one is the same thing here. There's another lymph node here. It has the same architecture. Everything is, if you look up a lymph node, and I have shown this so many times, I'm not going to do it again. This is, again, the filter. And it comes up, and all this somehow keeps it out. And then this one also is all bubbled up in black as well. This is what happens to lymph nodes when they get dead. And these are dead because they're being invaded by the toxins that the lymph up here is trying to pull away to save the tissue. It can't do it. So they both died at the same time. Because as far as I'm concerned, this is his coil wrapping around his fish. And the fish is obviously dead. He's obviously dead. And it appears to me there was an ocean or something in here. I mean, I don't know how the fish was. Well, the fish changed herself into a fish to try to escape, and ended up here. But to me, it looks like something was in here like an ocean, and it ran out and created the Cape Verde Islands. It all flooded off here and piled up here, and then ended up splaying around the edges here. And these are the Cape Verde Islands. Now, I also believe it's possible this would be Atlantis. All right, because it has some of the characteristics of what Atlantis was supposed to be like. But I also am going to tell you another thing. I just showed you two gigantic creatures. This was apparently another gigantic creature, and this was an eyeball from it. This is an eyeball. All right, and I looked at it very, very carefully. And right up in here is where the optic nerve comes in. You see that? And it feeds the eyeball, all of this stuff wrap around the eyeball and all into this. I don't know how exactly it works, but I can tell you what, that's where the optic nerve feeds all that. You see it? See how unique this is here? And what's feeding that? This here. There's some unique biology going on right up in this area, and I believe it's the optic nerve. I'm going to go with that. And then that feeds down through all those little fibers that surround the eyeball, whether they pinch them in or I don't know what they do at that point, whether they just, these are all signals coming back, whatever. But this was an eyeball. I can almost absolutely 100% guarantee that. Now, what else do I see here in this area? I see a straits. And this is the straits right here. At some point in time, this, it appears to me, this side here was ocean, and this side here ran out. When this thing collapsed, and everything ran out of here, the straits are still here. And then all that stuff ran out into the ocean and created Cape Verde Islands. And that's what Plato said. He said Atlantis collapsed, and in one day it was gone. And this is it. Maybe. But I can tell you what, and there's no question whatsoever, that's the fish, and that's the dragon. And this is all written about exactly identical, word for word, in Apollodorus. So how would they know that stuff? The only reason they know is because it's true. And it was passed down, and it was too spectacular for anybody to even consider. And that's why they threw all this stuff out of the ancient texts about these, you know, it's absolutely spectacular, unbelievable, truly unbelievable to the average mind without seeing the evidence. But even in the evidence, the average mind that's educated says, no, that's not real, it can't be real, it's impossible, I don't want to see it, take it away from me. And basically that's what has happened. The more educated you are, the less likely you are to be able to understand truth. It's almost like truly what they say, menticide, brainwashing. Menticide says you're so indoctrinated that you cannot stop thinking what you think. It cannot change. And that's called menticide. It's like homicide of the brain.